Okay. So we don't know who me is. So just in case that's someone who's not familiar with me or Alyson, I'm just going to do a very quick introduction. My name's Jennifer Rabin. I'm an arts writer and an artist and an arts activist. And I'm going to be leading this studio visit with Alyson. So I'm going to stop my video and share my screen with all of you so that you can, I'm going to give you a really short few minutes, just a quick primer in case you're not familiar with Alyson's work. It'll just give you a context for the types of things that she does, which we'll be talking about during the studio visit. So give me 1 second to share my screen. Can everyone see okay?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So Alyson Provax is a printmaker and an animator based in Portland, Oregon, and an artist I greatly admire. I also think about her as someone who makes visual poetry and someone who does text-based conceptual art. I don't know that she would think of herself in that way, but that's how I think of her over the years of seeing her exhibitions and doing studio visits with her. So I'm going to go through a few of her series that I want you to see, and I've just pulled a few images from each of the series just to give you an idea of the type of work that Alyson makes. This one is the first one that I saw. This is the first exhibition of Alyson's that I saw, so it has a very soft place in my heart. The inspiration for this series was an unexplained light that Alyson saw in the sky in 2015. And this entire series, it's fairly small scale works. I think they're about, what, Alyson, 5 inches by 5 inches or so?
Yeah.
Okay. And the phrases taken and made into letterpress works are actually culled from a UFO reporting website. Where people gave their accounts of their UFO encounters. And to me, it's a really beautiful illustration of uncertainty, which is a theme that you'll see threads through all of Alyson's work. And she's captured this feeling of different people reporting an experience that not a lot of people have a grounding in. And so there's this sort of atmospheric quality to this series that I love. And some of the pieces are letterpress works on paper and some of them are animations, as you can see.
Mm-hmm. And the animations were made with letterpress, the scanned
letterpress pieces. The next series, which is just endeared you so much to me, Alyson, is taken from things that people have said on the TV show The Bachelor. And you wouldn't think that you could take something so superficial and make a really deep exploration of these notions of performing for an audience that you can either see or not see. But Alyson did it. So you can also see the dynamic quality. Letterpress is often very, very traditional and staid. It's often like very rectilinear, and you see it on business cards and wedding invitations. And something that's remarkable about Alyson's practice and the way that she works is she's able to use letterpress and to make so much movement in her compositions.
Yeah, I was in a show a couple of years ago, and the focus was non-traditional drawing methods, and that was sort of a nice turning point in terms of how I saw what I was doing. Where I was like, oh right, this is actually probably closer to drawing than it is to
Yeah.
making in a lot of ways.
It's like mark making, but you're just doing it with letters and words. It's really interesting. And you can see also how she's experimenting with like different opacities of text. This is one that you'll see later on in another form. So this is really interesting. And this also shows how an artist can take a seed of something and break it out into different media. This I loved. Alyson made as part of the exhibition. So she had, you know, some higher priced works in the gallery. She made a series of posters, like literally the kind of posters that you would tack onto your wall with thumbtacks, like a Tiger Beat poster. And this was it. And it's a scan of, what's the kind of paper, Alyson? It's not regular stock.
Yeah, it's a graphite transfer paper.
Transfer paper, yeah. This is a light box that Alyson, she did a series for this, which are really beautiful. You can see the different ways that Alyson uses text in lots of different media and preparations. And is this the first show that you did mirrors for?
No, I'd done mirrors
Okay.
before that, but it, you know, was sort of starting to get excited about them in this show. I had a couple.
That's me drinking scotch on my birthday out of a lonely straw that Alyson made for this series about The Bachelor, which gives me great joy. And it's on my desk right now, and I'll show you guys when we come off of this, when I get back on video. This next series, I'm gonna actually have Alyson tell you about.
Yeah, so this is sort of what I've been working on maybe like end of last summer, last winter, or, you know, around then. And I sort of, you know, it's this sort of interesting thing. There was a friend of mine that was going through some really difficult times and was sort of, I think experiencing some PTSD and of some form. And I was talking with her about that, and it sort of, I guess, like reminded me of that sort of time when you are immediately processing things that are difficult, and sort of all of the weird, I don't know, the feelings around that, and the sense that the way that you feel right now is how you will feel forever, and that there's sort of this like heaviness to it. So I was thinking about that and trying to make work that was like looking at maybe not an event, but the aftermath for an event, how you process things, how you think about things, how you sort of like come back around to things, and maybe acknowledging that difficulty a bit, which I certainly have been thinking about many of these things still, or looking at these things differently. Because I think one of the things that's been difficult about all of our isolation right now is that it sort of mimics a lot of those same feelings in a certain way, where, you know, things feel difficult and your mind feels sort of cloudy and you're afraid to go outside, and, you know, there's all of these ways that it relates back. So that's that.
Oh, I love this one so much. Do you have any ink on, so the ones toward the center of the composition, is there any ink on that at all?
No.
Yeah, so beautiful.
No, it's just a line emboss.
So these next two series I wanted to introduce really quickly, because I have seen them over the years, but they have taken on completely new meaning for me now that we are in this moment of isolation and quarantine, and time is stretched in a way that is unprecedented, at least for me. The series was made when Alyson's full-time job involved her her billable hours were billed by the 10th of the hour, so she was keeping track of her time in 6-minute increments. Which is a fairly daunting and mundane thing to do. And so she started tracking her outside of work time, her non-billable hours in similar ways, the time outside of work, but tracking instead of her productive billing time, the way that she felt like she was wasting time outside of work. And this really speaks to me in terms of the slog of time that we're all experiencing, because I feel like time accordions, and sometimes I feel like I notice every minute passing, every second passing, and other times, you don't even know what day it is. And so this series really just started speaking to me in different voices than it had in the past. This one's my favorite. And this next one follows really beautifully because it moves from those really discrete, definite periods of time by the second and minute, and it moves it into this more amorphous, undifferentiated, indefinite periods of time. Alyson, I'm reading from the description of this series that it is a silkscreen monotype, and I have absolutely no idea what a silkscreen monotype is. So can you explain how you made these?
Sure. So these, so there's a couple different ways that you can approach silkscreen monotypes. A silkscreen basically is, one form of printmaking matrix. So a fine mesh screen that you're pushing ink through. And when you make, multiples, you would have some image burned into the screen and you're just putting ink through and all, and that's how you're creating these repeated patterns. For a monotype is just one, you're just making one at a time. It's not repeatable. So for these, I had completely open screens, no matrix to work off of particularly. And then Caran d'Ache crayons, they're the water-based crayons, basically. So I would draw with those on the screen and then manipulate it with water, and then when I got it to a good place, then print all of that through with a clear ink. So that's how these were made.
Oh, you were drawing directly onto the screen with these crayons.
Yeah, and then sort of messing with it. I guess in a way it's sort of similar to a watercolor painting, sort of, or using the watercolor crayons directly, but there's this, you're using them directly on the screen and then pushing that through onto the paper. So you're sort of able to choose a particular moment in time and freeze it by pushing it through. So.
And I love how you've moved, how you've moved from this like amorphous, indefinite period to like, basically, what the fuck is time? Like, the complete dissolution of time at all, which I think is really beautiful. The next series is something that Alyson did it was a public art project that Alyson did in Seattle, and her works tend to be much smaller scale, the scale is very precious. They're often 5 by 5 inches or maybe a little bit bigger, because the type is really small. And so it's the type of work, Alyson's work, it's on paper usually, and it draws you towards it. It's a very small, precious thing that you want to move toward when it's on a wall. And this was very different, which is that you started doing billboards.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys will recognize this from the Bachelor series. So you took that, or a similar composition, and you turned it into a billboard in Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the focus of that show, it was a group show, was all about loneliness in cities and, sort of feeling isolated while in a crowd. And obviously all of these things are very, very much on my mind again. As Mary, I left around Seattle as part of the show. So I was just like driving around Seattle with a bunch of these mirrors in my car and waiting to see sort of places that looked, I don't know, exciting in a way. And then leaving the mirror there, photographing it and taking off. Actually, initially I was posting them on Craigslist free as well, but then I got removed, which is still sort of a mystery, but you know, what are you going to do?
So you were just leaving these for anyone who wanted to take them home, yeah?
Yeah. They're just free on the street.
So this one, for anyone who can't read their monitor, it says it won't happen again. And this one says it won't last forever, which is great, next to a receptacle for garbage.
Yeah.
Loving that. And this is an extension of that Seattle project, which is to say it's a public art project using ad space, but you brought it to Portland, and you basically rented out bus bench ads all around the city of Portland and the surrounding suburbs.
Yep.
And again, focusing on similar themes of doubt, the unknowable, the uncertain, things that can't be quantified.
This one might still be up. This one might still be up. It's by the Safeway.
This is the one. And I love them.
That's your grocery store. Check it out.
They're like in the most quotidian places. Like this one's outside of is it a grocery store or a pharmacy or something?
Yeah.
And this one's by the side of the road near an office park. Sorry, I should let you guys look at that a little bit longer. And they're just so surprising and lovely to come upon, and people, you know, this was just a part of their day of commuting. This was my favorite one of all time, of all of them. The setting for that one was just really beautiful, and I love how they look graffitied. Honestly, it's like later into the month or 2 months when people started having their way with them, and I actually think that's incredibly beautiful.
Yeah. I like it that people primarily graffitied in the white spots on them.
I know, it seems very respectful. Okay, that's all for this. This is just one that didn't fit anywhere that I absolutely love, that I wanted everyone to see. So I'm going to stop this, and now we can all look into each other's faces again. And hello to all the people who joined us during the time that I was given a little primer on Alyson's work. And hi, it's nice to see your faces. As I said before, feel free to put yourself on video if you like, but there's no expectation if you want to stay hidden. So something, I want to hear what you're working on now, but one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because it totally lit me up, is I'm used to talking to you and coming to your studio and having a more informal relationship with you and your work. But for this, I prepared by like reading more formalized language that you have, right? Your artist statements and all that kind of stuff. And the thing that just completely nailed me to my seat was you talk about something called averted vision, which I'd never heard before.
Yeah.
And it is a technique used by astronomers to see a faint object more clearly by looking just to the side of it. And I thought about, my grandfather was an art restorer, and he would take me to museums, and he had worked on really famous paintings, and he would want to show me like what work had been done on the paintings. And I would go and I would look at it, and I would stand in front of it, and he'd be like, no, honey, come here. And he would take me to the side, and he would say, you want to look in a raking light to the side of the painting, and that will show you more than looking head on to something. And so when I saw your description of averted vision, I thought, wow, that makes so much sense. And also your work feels, I don't know how to say this other than to say like adjacent to things. Like it feels like you get at these essential truths by not speaking directly to the theme that you're looking at, but going just off to the side of it. So I'm just curious if you had anything you wanted to say about averted vision, because that's like my new favorite thing.
Yeah, well, I will say that when I've tried to practice it for like looking at faint stars, it's really hard because you'll be looking just to the side and you'll catch it, and then your eye wants to look at it because you've caught this faint star, and then of course it goes away because you are looking straight at it and it's gone again, which is sort of, you know, like the the essential problem of all of this, right? Like that's why I like that as a metaphor for these other things. Like, I think that maybe when you are approaching things in like a very dead on, sort of like dead center way, you lose something about it, and you're not actually able to see things as clearly, and maybe there's like more of a resistance there one way or another, but that if you're sort of coming around the side of things, it can be easier to like feel all of the things around it. And I also, I mean, like for a long time with my work, it's like I've been really interested in making really personal work for a really long time, but I also really wanted it to not be about me, which is like a very weird paradox, and something that, you know, I mean, I don't particularly know how to approach that, except for to be like, okay, we're going to come around the side of things. Like, I'm going to try and see what it is about this thing that I'm feeling right now that's interesting, and we'll go there. And with certain things like this too, like, you know, like stuff will just sort of come around to me in a sidelong way. You know, I was like watching The Bachelor for a couple of years, just being like, why do I like this show? Why do I keep watching this? It's so long. Each episode is like an hour and a half long, like spending a lot of time on this, but I keep watching. And then eventually I was like, what is this weird way of talking that they all have? This is so consistent. And then I started tracking it, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. So, you know, it's also like a way of working, I suppose.
This is something I really love about your practice, which is, you know, I'll go to an exhibition of yours and I'll feel so directly spoken to by like the nuance and subtlety of what you're talking about and the poetry of it. And it feels, it just feels really subtle. And San, can you mute yourself?
Oh yeah, when you're done, I'd like to just say something, okay?
Yeah, of course. We can do questions after this.
It's not a question.
Okay, yeah. So now I forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah, so I know that feeling of like being really drawn in by what feels like really nuanced poetry, and then finding out like, oh, Alyson made this about The Bachelor, which it just charms me to know, I'm spitting, to no end about the way that you work. Sandy, now's your time.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what you were saying about averted vision. Is Alyson, you probably know this, but it is a phenomenon within perceptual psychology. It's called the phi phenomenon, where if you stare at a fixed object for a period of time, it looks like it's moving when in fact it's not. So by averting your vision, you're able to see it in a more stable view.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's interesting, because it's not only that you're able to see something that's really faint if you look off to the side of it, but you're actually able to see a more stable view of it by looking off to the side of it.
That's great.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I just knew about it from when I was a teenager. I had an interest in astronomy that, you know, just sort of hung out there for a little bit, never fully developed, but I have all just like these weird remnants from that. So. But that's beautiful. Yeah, it's more really stable.
Cool. So I want to hear what you're working on now, but does anybody have any questions for Alyson about anything up to this point? If you don't, it's okay. I just want to leave space for if anyone has any comments or questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are you working on now? I've been seeing small mirrors showing up on Instagram.
Yeah. So, well, that's an interesting story. It all sort of like ties together a little bit. So I've been working on a group project in the Bay Area that's going to be going up in June, which is an interesting time to have a public group show happen right now, and things are sort of changing on that a lot. It's another iteration of the Alone series, also with also curated by Vignettes and through Montalvo Art Center in San Jose. And so I've been sort of making plans for things.
Just so that everyone knows that that's the billboard series that you did in Seattle.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and you know, so I've been sort of like coming back to a lot of these things about loneliness, about cities, and about cities changing. I mean, like the Bay Area has like undergone so much change, and there's like such, you know, I guess like thinking back to how I was thinking about this at the end of last year. There's, you know, people I feel like are sort of very isolated in a very specific way in the Bay Area because of like the intensity of their commutes and these sorts of things. And now it's also one of the major pressure points of the COVID-19 situation. And so and people have been sheltering in place there for several weeks now, and I'm sure probably will be for a while longer. And, you know, and so I think all of the things that were already in existence about like that region, you know, in terms of the major income disparities between people who, you know, many of the people who work in tech, I guess not everyone who works in tech is like making tons of money, shouldn't totally generalize, but you know, between that and people who are in other, you know, sort of more regular jobs has become way more extreme in a certain way. And certainly, you know, everybody who's working in grocery stores and whatnot in the Bay Area is still having to go in, but obviously probably tech has the easiest time with setting up work from home situations anyway, because, you know, that's, so I guess, you know, so there have been all of these things bubbling up with that. Was a bit of a divergence, but I initially had been wanting to make these small mirrors to like leave around the gardens at Montalvo as part of this project. And I bought some right before the COVID situation started, and I just like sort of had them, and it actually like, it oddly like took me a little while to realize like, of course I'm not going to be going down to the Bay Area in June. Oh, of course that's not going to be open. Of course other people aren't get like, no part of this, of that works anymore. But I have these mirrors, and I've been sort of trying to figure out how to, you know, like how to work on anything at all right now, because that's like also been so difficult with all of the general uncertainty, you know, it's so strange for me. Like I'm in a really lucky situation. Part of that is that my studio is at my home. So like I can, you know, I'm home, I can be working on things, but my focus has just been like trash lately. And I can't seem to like put in sustained time on things. And I think part of that is just this like perpetual uncertainty and loneliness that is pervading like just everything right now. And something we, you know, we had talked about a little bit, you know, just like trying to think about how you're going to get groceries, or like what things are going to look like in a couple of weeks. Like how do you make any kind of plans? How do you stay connected with people? And so I think there's sort of, you know, maybe there's like an idea that when we have some free time that we'll be able to like spend it making things, and like if only all of the other parts of our lives were like just out of the way, we'd just be able to get so much done. But obviously all of the other parts of our lives are like what has been supporting us in making all of the things that we do and doing all of the things that we normally do. And also like the more uncertainty that is in your life, the harder it is to like focus on doing anything new and thinking about anything new. So, you know, in any case, I've been making some mirrors because that's been like something that I've been able to do. I've been hoping to make some other things too, but I've been making these mirrors and then taking them out and just like photographing them around my neighborhood with the spring flowers that are popping up. And I just sort of like that as like a possible action to do right now. Like I can be making these things and just sort of sitting with them and seeing what resonates. So
It feels small and manageable and hopeful in a way to me, seeing those images on Instagram that you're posting. And I'm also really interested that it seems like it's actually harder to make work and to meditate on loneliness and uncertainty during a time where we're all experiencing loneliness and uncertainty, which I think is really interesting, actually.
Yeah, it's not what I was expecting at first. At first I was like, wow, there's suddenly these things that I've been like thinking about for years are on everyone's minds all the time. Like maybe I'll just be able to really like jump in. And I'm hoping that at some point it turns into that, but it has made it a lot harder. And maybe it's just like because there's no respite from the uncertainty. Like I can't dip into like thinking about it and thinking about my relationship to uncertainty and things that are sort of, it's gonna sound really funny, things that are like static about uncertainty. But with
this our uncertainty now, our shared uncertainty feels very dynamic. It's like, oh, we may have a totally different type of uncertainty tomorrow than we have today. It's not this just forever type of uncertainty where we just acclimate to it and then it's moving and changing in a way that's sort of disconcerting. So is that new series that was planned for June, were the mirrors the primary public art component, or were there also billboards planned?
Yeah, so there's also one billboard in San Jose, and the space has been reserved, so there will be a billboard in San Jose. It will be
like you've already planned it, you've come up with a composition, it's submitted and done, or are you changing it in light of what's been going on?
I mean, it's mostly done. I'm still sort of thinking about how to for this whole project in general, like how to reach out to people, because sort of the way that I've been conceptualizing of the billboard in the past is that the billboard itself is reaching out to people. Like when you see something, when you see something in a repetitive way, like that's on your commute or like on one of your everyday routes, it's just sort of like there and it becomes a part of your life for that month. And I think that's sort of beautiful, but obviously all of that has changed quite a bit, and not that there aren't still people who like have commutes, but there are fewer of them and they are in a totally different spot. I mean, if you still have a commute right now, the daily stress that you are under is pretty intense. And so I've just been sort of trying to sit with that and see what to do with it. It's it feels really I mean, like in a certain way, it's sort of amazing to have this like project that that I'm working on with other people that's all about like loneliness and isolation and how we can feel so separate from each other while we're all like together in the same spaces at this time when it's like just so much of what's on everyone's mind. And then I'm just trying to figure out how to respond to this specifically, if that's even, and that's what's funny too, like, is that, how much does that change that feeling, the specifics, maybe it's just different specifics of the same thing. So it's been an interesting thing to be thinking about. I guess I was also sort of been like relating this back a little bit to the solar eclipse a couple years ago, which was like such a totally different kind of shared experience. But like on the day of the solar eclipse, everyone was sort of together in this like magic of like, there's a thing happening in the sky. We can all see it. We can all talk about it. This is different from how things normally are. Like, this is so interesting. And then, we're having a very, very different type of group experience right now with this, where I think a lot of people are feeling versions of the same thing, or different types of responses to the isolation and the loneliness, but yeah, but we're sort of all in it together, which is interesting. Like there's maybe, like that maybe there's a sort of normally like a sort of like stigma to talking about your loneliness, but I don't think that right now anyone is feeling any kind of stigma with talking about their loneliness. Like suddenly that's just like, it's out. We're all talking about that with each other all the time. And it's, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting time to be thinking about these sorts of things.
And it's an interesting time to be making a billboard, which is specifically intended to reach as many people as possible in these public spaces when no one's inhabiting those public spaces. And how do you actually reach out to those people? And like, do you have an opportunity to, and are you even thinking about like did you say it's totally, you said you're still tooling away on it a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's some sort of decisions to make about like the final form, but I've been pretty set on the phrase and the way that it's ended for a couple months now. And interestingly, I sort of, at first I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to want to change this? Like, should I make something new? And I sort of sat with it for a couple weeks and came back to it and was like, as it turns out, this thing that I made in, like the end of last year about this, I look at it now and I'm like, yeah, okay, that still feels appropriate, which is also very strange too, to just be like, thinking about how maybe there's something sort of stable about these feelings. We're just all having them right now, like that it can exist in a similar way. I'm really curious. I mean, I guess I don't know this exactly, but I'm really curious if there is anyone who would like be able to see this billboard from their apartment. Like I don't know, but I really like that would be magical at that point, basically making it for that person.
So, what's so interesting to me about what you're saying is, remember the molding that, oh my God, the show we just went to, Jen. Wow, I'm totally.
It's okay. Say more about it.
Willis, his show. He had
Hank Willis Thomas.
Hank Willis Thomas had done. He had done this molding of a statue in Africa that was of men raising their arms up to be chosen to go into the mines. And he had taken a molding of it and then he like cut it up and he made this piece. And he made the piece before it happened, but like maybe a week or two after he made this piece, Ferguson happened. So he has this piece of all these men with their arms raised up. So I think it's amazing how art, right? It's almost that collective unconsciousness of how you tapped into it before it actually happened, but it's so relevant for what's happening now. I don't know.
Yeah, and there can be, and that piece was amazing. That whole show was amazing. But that piece was, And I think that they turned that piece into like a larger public sculpture somewhere too. But yeah.
Also at Brian Stevenson's museum. Do you know what I'm talking about? The museum, the lynching museum. I believe he has I think Hank Willis Thomas is a full-size version of that much smaller work that we saw at PAM, I think. Does anyone know if that's true or if I'm making that up?
I know that there's a larger version of it somewhere and maybe that's where it is. I know I've like seen, and isn't it interesting how there's just sort of those things where it's, if it's sort of tapped into some kind of feeling, then that can, that can mean in a certain way.
And I think there's like a a permanence or a steadfastness to some of the themes that you're talking about. You talk about doubt and no, you don't talk about, you deal with doubt and uncertainty and loneliness in your work. And so there's lots of permutations of that, but there's also a core of it that's very permanent, that doesn't change. To, more, like you said, more of us are experiencing it on a different level, and it's less taboo to talk about it. But in the statistics, I remember reading an article months and months ago before the pandemic about something like 75% of people identify as lonely. And so it's a really common phenomenon. And it's not just like, oh, the poor unmarried single people who have no children. Like, it is across all sectors of society. It is married, unmarried, children, everybody. And so that's why I was so excited and wanted to talk to you about your work, because it feels so newly relevant, and I'm seeing it all with new eyes, like during this time. And work and series that you've made in the past that really spoke to me for one reason is speaking to me for totally different reasons now. And like Nicole said, this is the beauty of art, which is that it does sort of move and contour itself to different circumstances and different times. I collect art, and I find that I'm drawn to different works that I have in my house at different times in my life for totally different reasons, and they speak just as strongly to me. And that's something. That's why I love art so much. It's a balm all the time. Oh, this is important. Very.
Oh, yes, good. Get out the straw. Yeah. Well, and it's such an interesting thing. I mean, and that's when I have been able to sort of like settle into making things right now for the last couple of weeks, like that has felt really good, and it's felt really like centering to be able to sort of like, I guess, like identify that thing of like, oh, this is the thing that I'm feeling right now. Let's go with that, and it's I think with uncertainty in particular, because it's so easy to, it's just so easy to like sort of dive into that uncertainty, because there's always uncertainty. And even when things are generally stable overall, or for you personally, like there's still so much uncertainty, and you just can't know anyway. And suddenly everything right now is like, is that to like the obvious extreme, that all of the uncertainty that exists is like hyper present in our faces, but for everyone as like a collective. Which it's sort of a funny, I was thinking too about working on the book last year and the year before, and how part of that was like this sort of, being uncertain about making changes, and sort of just like trying to like dive into feeling that. And I guess like getting interested in the way that like unseen forces can sort of push things anyway, that, trying to make things that like explicitly didn't show everything, but you were able to get something from it anyway, and that the hidden part had its own meaning, which has sort of been on my mind one way or another, like, well, since the eclipse. That's like a really like very profound, like, oh, the thing that you don't see can be more important than the thing that you see. But yeah, I guess, like coming back to some of that work has been real intense right now. Like I hadn't looked at it for a little bit, and then looking at that again, it's like, oh wow, this is something too. So I'm hoping, I'm hoping that some of these things pop up in some other ways. It feels good to work on these things, even though it's like harder harder to work on things in general. So
Do you have work that you made around and about the eclipse? I don't remember you mentioning it.
oh yeah, I did some work like both before and after the eclipse that were those sort of like trying to look at the eclipse. And I even like made a couple prints on the day of the eclipse, like after I got home from seeing it, because I wanted to try and like capture some of that. It was like sort of on my mind a lot that year. Yeah.
Do you have anything you can show? Do you have any mirrors you can show us? That
Oh yeah. Here, well, there's the one that is here.
It's just me looking at myself. Oh.
So yeah, so that's and that was also sort of like nice timing for me. I got a vinyl plotter like at the end of February because I was like, oh, I want to do more of this like vinyl work, and so it's been really easily accessible for me and something I'm able to like do here and not have to order out, have anybody else like producing the vinyl and shipping it to me. So that's that was good timing.
Yeah, so in the past you've had to order that reflective vinyl lettering from an outside shop, and now you're able to cut it yourself in your studio.
Yeah.
Is the machine cool?
It's really cool. It's like a crafting machine too. So all of the tutorials for it are like how to make.
What is it meant for?
It's meant to decorate everything in your life, basically.
Is it like for decoupage books or something?
Yeah, or like the vinyl cutting, like people will do like custom wine glasses for their friends and like, these sorts of things. Yeah, so it's wild. Like it'll I
really like about your work is that you take these processes that are often really commercial and you use them for fine art. So like you have you released a fortune cookie at The Bachelor. I know it's not called The Bachelor, but at the exhibition that featured your work about The Bachelor, you had fortune cookies, and there's like a text-based piece of work. That's the fortune, and you use like a straw make as crazy straw making company, and you have commercial cut vinyl, and you put up ad space on bus benches, and so these things that are very like what I would consider like, low. You do a very high, it's interesting, you do a very high-low practice, or you use these processes that are considered like pretty lowbrow, very commercial, and you make these beautiful work. Like I didn't put an image of it. You don't have a blanket lying around, do you?
Yeah, just a minute.
Hold one moment, please. Alyson made through a commercial weaver. I think mostly people buy these blankets and they send like a picture of their cat, I think maybe is how they're made. Amanda's saying yes. But she actually took a scan of one of her letterpress compositions and she had them weave blankets. I have one, which I'm very, very happy and excited about. And the thing that I deeply love about those blankets, for anyone who goes online and looks at them, are there any more available, or are they out? Okay.
They sold out really.
Okay. Well, maybe you'll do another series in the future. But the thing I love about it so much is instead of doing a black and having them weave it in black and white, you actually did a full color scan and you had them weave it in full color. And the thing that kills me about it is it has artifacts from the letterpress, from the printing process on it that look like mistakes, but are actually just little points of ink from the scan.
Yeah,
that are just. I mean, it looks like textured paper. The blanket looks like textured paper, which I don't know how the fuck you managed to do that. But it's, so, are you going to be leaving the smaller scale mirrors? I mean, are you going to be leaving them around town, or are you just too worried about like transmitting pestilence?
I've been thinking about leaving them around town. I'm like really on the fence about whether or not that's like safe or not. I think it's probably safe. But it's like suddenly on my mind in a different way. So yeah, so far I've just been photographing them and then keeping them. So we'll see. I do like the idea of like leaving them places, because one of the things that I sort of like about leaving art for free on the street in general, but just any kind of like any of these more commercially produced things in general, is I like having like unexpected objects in my life in general. Like I think there's something really wonderful about like bringing that kind of attention to other places, because it sort of like makes you look at everything a little bit differently. And I know, like, the periods when I feel the best are the periods when I'm just giving everything in my life close attention, like that's pretty stable. So so like maybe having those things, like even the bus benches being a good example of it. Like if there's sort of something that you see out in the world that's unexpected and beautiful to you, it can like change the way that you see everything else that whole day or that whole week, and that's awesome. So so I like that a lot with the mirrors. Like suddenly everybody is going for walks all the time. I don't know if you've been to the park lately, but like it's bumping. And so, so there's something nice, I think, about like leaving mirrors out, because everybody's out for walks and looking around, and it could be this like lovely little moment of magic and connection. Yeah, I'm just not sure like how, like how that factors in.
Even if people choose not to bring them home just for reasons of like they're nervous about touching it, I think that magic and connection is still conveyed. And honestly, maybe people will choose to take a photograph of themselves in the mirror, and like you just don't know what the permutations are going to be in this time. But I personally love the idea. I mean, that I'm a huge fan of art galleries and museums, and going there, that's one of my favorite things on earth to do. But I also love the idea of people just spontaneously encountering art in places where they're not trying to see it, it's just there. And I think I told you I was going to an attorney to write my last will and testament, super cheery, and on my way, literally on my way to the attorney's, I was like a block from the attorney. I look up and there was Alyson's billboard. I had no idea that it was going to be there. I was not expecting it. And it completely transformed that experience at the attorney's office. It changed the way that I walked into the building. It changed, like, it was transformative. So I really believe in, yeah.
Remember what the billboard said?
It was the one on Burnside, Alyson. Is it You're Not Alone?
It said that can change.
That can change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, these things, like even not in even things that aren't meant as art. I mean, I was like driving somewhere earlier this week, and there's a billboard on Powell, and it says sort of more than this, but it was basically just an encouraging billboard for all of us for this time, and and said that we're all in this together, which is, I think, like the most repeated phrase of this like pandemic, right? That's the thing that I'm hearing the most. But it also like seeing it out there sort of big, I was like, oh wow, yeah, like this is it felt really like powerful to me at that moment. And so there's something sort of nice about having things in the world that are just like there for your support,
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody have anything they want to say or to Alyson or ask Alyson?
Yes, I would like to know, Alyson, how do you manage to get that magic blue light coming through your window behind you?
Oh, yeah, wow.
Isn't that funny? It's just, so my studio is in the basement. So that's the window. That's basically ground level right there at the top of it. And the window is north facing. We've got 2 north facing windows and here. And I don't know, that light just looks super blue right now. It's a sunny day in Portland, maybe that's it. But like, yeah.
It's magic basement light, obviously.
Yeah.
One of the, actually 2 of the chats that came through, Alyson, while you were talking is people want to know if your work is available online.
Oh, yes.
No, not to see, to purchase.
Oh, yeah. So yes, to purchase online, I still have a couple of those posters from the show that Jennifer showed on my website. There's some original letterpress work through Uprise Art, which is an online gallery out of New York, and they have been, I have to say, like, extremely wonderful and supportive during this time. They're all working remotely, but they're still keeping up on everything they can safely. So they're, despite the fact that I'm sure it must be a stressful time to be in New York. So they are wonderful. And then if there's anything that you're not seeing on there,
there was an inquiry about the time wasting experiment, and I know that's an open edition. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. I have, it's an open edition. I have some of those prints still available. So if you want to just, like email me through my website, I can take a look, see what I have. I'm trying to figure out shipping right now. I am able to ship things in the US from my home without going out into the world. And I'm trying to figure out like what I can do for international shipping. It's just like one of these weird practical problems in my life right now. So, but certainly if you're in the US, it's very easy and I promise to ship to you. Otherwise, there might be some delay while I, try and figure that out. So
I think everybody is US, but I'm not certain. Any other last questions or comments for Alyson or me or each other?
Yeah, I have a question or comment. First of all, I love both of your work, Alyson and Jennifer. Jennifer, we've met. I teach at PCC. I was there when you had a lecture. In any case, Alyson, I've been thinking about, you were talking about this idea of, the loneliness and the sort of that all these things that you usually attend to in your work or you attend to in your work are essentially these unspeakable, unsayable things. And now all of a sudden they're speakable and sayable and they're part of this general conversation. Is there anything that you're seeing or that's coming up that's the new unspeakable or new unsayable in these new times?
Oh, that's a great question.
That's such a good question. What's the new taboo?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and I don't think that this is, that exactly, but I think that there's maybe, I think we all have like a greater awareness of all of the things that we do have and like maybe a gratitude for that, but it can also make it more difficult for us to talk about the things that are difficult for us in this, in this other way, that we are talking more about loneliness, but at the same time we're like, well, if this is true for you, I'm feeling very lonely now, but at least I'm safe, or, I'm feeling like very uncertain, but at least, I'm still healthy, or, whatever that is for your particular situation. And so I don't know that that's the new taboo though. And I think it comes and goes. Like that's always a good thing to acknowledge anyway, right? That like you can be feeling multiple things at once. You can be feeling both grateful and scared and lonely all at the same time. And like that there are ways to be feeling. It doesn't actually change things for, for other people, for you to be like, well, I'm feeling bad. Things are still relatively fairly good for me, but I'm still feeling bad. But I don't know that that's the taboo thing.
I wonder if there's a part of it, I don't know that I have a great answer, but I've been noticing that there's something around productivity, that so many people have these vast swaths of time. And of course, no one would wish this. We don't have vast swaths of time because we want to, or we're on vacation. It's because we've been laid off. It's because we're quarantined. And I think there's this very American notion of like, you should be making the most of this time. You've got nothing to do. You should be writing your next book. You should be making your next series. You should be solving the world. And most of the time, we're all just like, can I just have 5 drinks and lie very, very still and watch Netflix because I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also think it's important for us to say to each other, like, if you just want to lie still for 3 days, like, that's great. And like, you do that, truly do that. It's okay. That's
a great point. It's so true. There's like, maybe that's the thing, like the productivity or the, like picking up some new skill or feeling like, oh, well, you know, you're cooking all of your meals at home, but you have all of this time to cook. Like, yeah, it's also like sort of exhausting, right?
Yeah. Does anyone have Shelley, do you have any things that you've been experiencing that you feel like people aren't talking about?
You know, I think it, you know, you kind of touched on it, but there's always this sort of undercurrent of the, trying to figure out like, I think that we always want to rise above our circumstances. And so that's, it's the same kind of idea of that, oh, this is affecting me. Well, never mind. I'm fine. Look at all the things I can do. And so it's the same thread. It's just weaving in a different place.
Yes. And Alyson, what Shelley just said made me think of one of the pieces in your, hang on, I'm going to look at it. It is a sort of aftermath series that said like, maybe it's nothing. And I think as humans, we're just like, no, this is fine. I'm fine. It's probably it's probably nothing. And like to be able to communally acknowledge like, no, this is something. This is really something, even if we're not touched by it. Listen, personally, I have the same job. I work remotely. None of my workday has been altered in any way. We all have always worked remotely. So on the surface, I'm like, nothing's changed, except I just don't go to the grocery store as often. But like, that's just patently false. This is something. And I think it's good for us to be able to have these kinds of conversations where we all are able to recognize that we're all having a shared experience right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it's like, it's going to affect all of us in different ways. And that regardless of that, like it is really, you know, it's a really difficult time for everyone in all different ways, and trying to like find the place for that and to not,
To diminish it or downplay it.
Yeah.
To really acknowledge and embrace that this is something.
Yeah.
So, anything else from anybody? Even if it's just something you want to talk about in terms of like art or quarantine or loneliness or uncertainty or doubt.
I just want to say hi. And I've been taking a lot of walks around our neighborhood too. And it would be nice to see more art on street posts and stuff like that. So what if you installed them on a street post so that they were like, not for taking necessarily, but probably not taken down?
Oh, that's a great idea.
And if it did get taken down, who cares? Because you originally intended that to be taken anyway.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
It's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah. Just to have something that's out there. It's true, because I think suddenly now that going out into the neighborhood or going to the park is like sort of the one thing that you can do that's like outside of your living space. Like it's become a lot more important. Yeah.
Well, if there's not anything else, oh, I do have one question. I can't believe I've never asked you this. Does your press have a name?
Oh yeah, she does have a name. Her name is Alma. It was one of the more popular names for humans in the year that she came into existence. Which actually, it's so funny. I can't remember off the top of my head. I knew it very well when I first got her, but I've had her for, oh my gosh, almost like 8 or 9 years now. So it was like either 1898 or 99 or like 1902 or something. She's older.
She's a lady.
Yeah.
Well, I think that just about does it. I am going to stop. Can I stop the recording? I'm going to stop the recording. But